Friday morning, Sarah left for work at 8:30, same as always. She kissed me goodbye, told me to have a good day. I watched her walk out the door, and I knew it was the last time I would see her. I called in sick to my job. I only had 2 weeks left there anyway, and I had enough saved time. At 9 a.m., the movers I hired showed up. I had paid them in cash, told them I needed discretion. They packed up my things in under 3 hours. I had no idea that in the next 5 minutes, my entire world would collapse. When I opened that bedroom door, everything I believed about love, family, and loyalty died right there on that floor. Before I continue with what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe so you do not miss other real stories like this one. And now let me take you back to that bedroom where everything fell apart. The house was quiet when I stepped inside except for some muffled sounds coming from upstairs. I noticed my brother Kyle's black Jeep parked outside, and I smiled, thinking he had stopped by to visit Laura. They had always gotten along well, and it made me happy that my future wife and my little brother were close. I set the tulips on the kitchen counter for a moment and headed upstairs planning to say hello before surprising Laura with the flowers. The sounds got clearer as I climbed the stairs. At first I thought maybe the television was on, or perhaps Laura was listening to music, but something in my chest started to tighten. My brain tried to push away the dark thoughts creeping in, telling myself it was nothing, that I was being paranoid. The bedroom door was slightly open. I reached out my hand, shaking just a little, and pushed it wider. There they were, Laura and Kyle. In my bed, tangled together. Clothes scattered across the floor I had vacuumed just 3 days ago. Time stopped. I could not move, could not speak, could not even breathe. The tulips I had been so excited about were still downstairs, forgotten, while my entire reality shattered into pieces so small I would never be able to put them back together. Laura saw me first. Her face went pale, then red, and she grabbed the sheet to cover herself. Not because she was ashamed of what she had done to me, I realized later, but because she was afraid of getting caught. There is a difference. Kyle sat up, fast scrambling for his jeans, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to say something but could not find the words. I just stood there, frozen, staring at the two people I loved most in the world after my parents. My mind raced through 1,000 questions. How long? How many times? Where? When did you laugh about me? Did you plan this while we were all having dinner together last Sunday? But none of those questions made it to my lips. I just stood there watching them panic, watching them try to become decent, as if putting clothes back on could somehow undo what I had just seen. Laura started crying. Her voice came out in broken sobs. She said she was sorry, that she did not mean for this to happen, that it was just one time that they had too much wine. Every word was a lie, and somewhere deep inside I knew it. This was not an accident. This was not a mistake. This was a choice. 2 months of choices, I would find out later. Kyle finally got his pants on and stood there looking at me with something that was not quite guilt and not quite defiance. He said, his voice barely above a whisper, that I had come home too early. Not that he was sorry, not that he had betrayed me. Just that I had come home too early, as if the problem was my timing, not his actions. That sentence hit me harder than seeing them together. It showed me exactly who my brother had become, someone I did not recognize anymore. I felt like I was watching this scene from outside my own body, like I was floating near the ceiling, looking down at this poor man, whose life was imploding, feeling sorry for him, but unable to help. My throat was tight, my chest hurt, but I did not cry. I could not. The pain was too big for tears. It was the kind of pain that settles into your bones and lives there forever. Finally, I found my voice. It came out calm, cold, terrifyingly steady. I told them to get out of my house. Laura grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my skin, begging me to let her explain, promising she would make me understand. I pulled my arm away like her touch burned me. If something feels off, it probably is. So I started paying more attention. And the more I looked, the more I saw. Credit card statements showed charges at restaurants I had never been to. Expensive places downtown. When I asked Sarah about them, she said they were work lunches, team dinners. But the charges were on weekends. She bought gifts I never received. Perfume, a watch, a leather wallet. She said they were for her dad's birthday, her brother's promotion. I walked downstairs, saw those yellow tulips still sitting on the counter, bright and cheerful, and completely out of place. I sat down on the bottom step of the staircase and stared at those flowers until the sun went down and the house got dark around me. My phone started ringing around 7 in the evening. Laura, Kyle, Mom. I let it ring. I could not talk to anyone. I could not explain what had happened because saying it out loud would make it real, and I was not ready for it to be real yet. So I just sat there in the dark, listening to my phone buzz over and over, watching those tulips wilt in the shadows. I need to tell you about the life I had before that Wednesday so you understand what I lost. I met Laura 3 years earlier, at an art exhibition in Portland. I am a construction engineer, not really the art gallery type, but my colleague had dragged me along. Laura was a middle school art teacher standing in front of a painting explaining to a group of students why the colors mattered. She had long blonde hair that caught the light, and when she smiled, her whole face lit up. We started talking, and I felt something I had never felt before, like I had been looking for her my whole life without knowing it. We took things slow. Dinners, weekend hikes, late-night conversations about everything and nothing. She was patient, kind, passionate about teaching kids to see beauty in the world. I proposed to her last spring at Cannon Beach, getting down on one knee in the sand while the sun set over the ocean. She cried when she said yes. We had already hired a wedding planner sent out, saved the date cards, picked out flowers for the reception. In 2 months, she was supposed to become my wife. Kyle is 5 years younger than me. When we were kids, I was the one who protected him. When our parents fought, I would take him to my room and we would build things with blocks until the yelling stopped. When he got bullied in middle school, I walked him home every day until the bullies got bored and moved on. I helped pay for his college tuition when money was tight. We were not just brothers, we were best friends. We watched football together every Sunday. We went fishing twice a year. I trusted him with everything. Our family lived in Seattle. Dad Michael had been a bank director before he retired. Mom Susan was a retired nurse. They raised us to value family above everything else, to stick together no matter what. Kyle was always the baby, the one who got sick easily when he was little, the one Mom worried about constantly. I was the steady one, the responsible one, the one they leaned on. I never minded. That was just how our family worked. But sitting on those stairs in the dark, I started to see our family differently. I started to wonder if I had been blind all along. The phone calls did not stop. Finally, at 9 in the evening, I answered when Mom called for the 15th time. Her voice was worried, but not about me. She said Kyle had just come home and told her everything. She said she knew I must be hurting, but Kyle was really torn up about it too. She did not ask how I was doing. She did not say Kyle was wrong. She just said he was torn up, like his guilt was somehow more important than my pain. I asked her if she understood what Kyle had done. She said yes, of course she understood, but Kyle was young, he did not think things through. He made a mistake. I reminded her that Kyle was 25 years old, not a child. She told me not to talk like that he was my brother, that brothers do not let a woman come between them. Then she hung up, leaving me standing there with the phone in my hand, realizing my own mother had just chosen my brother over me. Dad called the next morning. His voice had that stern quality he used when he was about to deliver a lesson. He said Mom had filled him in, and while the situation was unfortunate, we needed to figure out how the family would handle it. I told him there was nothing to handle. Kyle betrayed me, and I wanted him out of my life. Dad's voice got harder. He asked if I was really planning to kick my own brother out of the family over this. He said Kyle had made a mistake, but I was being extreme. The way he said it made it sound like I was the problem, not Kyle. I realized something in that moment. My family was not going to stand up for me. They were going to protect Kyle, the baby, the one who needed defending, even when he was the one who had destroyed me. And I was supposed to just accept it, because that is what good big brothers do. 3 days later, Mom and Dad demanded I come home for a family meeting. They said we needed to handle this in a civilized way. I did not want to go, but some part of me still hoped they would do the right thing, that they would sit Kyle down and make him understand the magnitude of what he had done. So I drove to their house in Seattle, that same house where Kyle and I grew up, where we had Christmas mornings and birthday parties, and every important moment of our childhood. Friday morning, Sarah left for work at 8:30, same as always. She kissed me goodbye, told me to have a good day. I watched her walk out the door, and I knew it was the last time I would see her. I called in sick to my job. I only had 2 weeks left there anyway, and I had enough saved time. At 9 a.m., the movers I hired showed up. I had paid them in cash, told them I needed discretion. They packed up my things in under 3 hours. He said Kyle had made a mistake, and yes, it was a bad one, but he was still my brother. He told me I could not cut off my relationship with my own brother because of a woman. The way he said it, like Laura, was just some random person and not someone I had planned to spend my life with, made my stomach turn. Mom jumped in her voice, pleading. She said Kyle had been crying for days, that he was so filled with regret he could barely eat. The wedding photos in frames, gifts from her family, kitchen stuff we had bought together. I did not want any of it. I opened a new bank account at a different bank and transferred all my money over. I canceled the one joint credit card we had, though I barely used it. I made a list of what I was entitled to in the divorce and what I was willing to walk away from. Honestly, I did not care about the furniture or the dishes. I wanted nothing that would remind me of this chapter of my life. I asked him one question: how many times he looked down at his hands. I asked again, louder this time: how many times did you sleep with my fiancée? He mumbled something I could not hear. I stood up and walked closer to him, my voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Tell me. He finally looked up, and I saw something in his eyes that was not remorse. It was fear of consequences, not regret for actions. He said it had been going on for about 2 months. 2 months. Not one drunken mistake like Laura had claimed. 2 months of lies. 2 months of looking me in the eye at family dinners, at football games, at regular weekday visits, while betraying me in the worst way possible. 2 months of coming to my house, eating my food, pretending to be my brother, then getting into bed with my fiancée the moment I left for work. I turned to my parents. I asked them if they heard that. 2 months, and they wanted me to forgive him. Dad stood up, his face red, telling me I was being overdramatic. Mom started crying, saying I was tearing the family apart. I looked at each of them, these people I had loved and trusted my whole life, and I did not recognize them anymore. I told them I could not do this. Dad said I had to, that I was the older brother, that I needed to set an example. I said I would not be a big brother to someone who stabbed me in the back. The room went silent. Then Dad said something that would echo in my mind for months. He said if I could not forgive Kyle, then I was not the man he raised me to be. I left their house that day and blocked all their numbers. Not out of hate, but out of self-preservation. I moved out of the house I had shared with Laura into a small apartment across town. I threw myself into work, spending 12-hour days at construction sites, coming home exhausted enough to fall asleep without thinking. My friends asked what happened with the wedding. I told them it was off, but did not explain why. Some pushed for details, but I kept quiet. What was I supposed to say? That my family chose my betrayer over me. Word got around to extended family. Aunts and uncles called, concerned about the broken engagement. When I finally told a few of them the truth, their responses were all variations of the same theme. Kyle was young. Boys make mistakes. Laura must have had her reasons. Family is forever. Not a single person said what I needed to hear, that Kyle was wrong, that what he did was unforgivable, that I had every right to walk away. Instead, they made excuses, minimized the betrayal, implied I was being too harsh. I realized I was completely alone in this. My family had chosen Kyle, and no amount of explaining would change their minds. So I stopped trying. I deleted their emails without reading them. I changed my routine so I would not accidentally run into them around town. I built a wall around myself and focused on just getting through each day. But I was not bitter. I was just done. There is a difference between holding a grudge and simply refusing to accept unacceptable behavior. I did not sit around hating Kyle or my parents. I just recognized that staying in that family dynamic would destroy me, and I chose myself instead. Some people called it selfish. I called it survival. 2 months passed. My throat was tight. My chest hurt. But I did not cry. I could not. The pain was too big for tears. It was the kind of pain that settles into your bones and lives there forever. Finally, I found my voice. It came out calm, cold, terrifyingly steady. I told them to get out of my house. Laura grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my skin, begging me to let her explain, promising she would make me understand. I pulled my arm away like her touch burned me. Mom wrote that she knew I was still upset, but Christmas was coming and family needed to be together for the holidays. She said Kyle really wanted to see me, that he missed me terribly. She ended the email by saying she hoped I would not let what happened ruin our family traditions, that forgiveness was the greatest gift I could give. I stared at that email for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to spend Christmas alone in my apartment, avoiding the whole situation. But another part of me, the part that still remembered Christmas mornings as a kid, that still loved my parents, despite everything, wondered if maybe they had finally understood. Maybe they wanted to make things right. Maybe this was their way of acknowledging that they had handled everything wrong and wanted to start over. I replied with one sentence: I will be there. I did not let myself hope too much, but I could not help wondering if maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would be different. Maybe my parents had spent these 2 months thinking about what happened and realized they had failed me. Maybe Kyle had grown up enough to offer a real apology. Maybe we could not go back to how things were, but we could at least acknowledge the truth of what happened. Christmas Eve arrived. I drove to my parents' house at 6 in the evening, a bottle of wine in one hand and flowers for Mom in the other. My stomach was in knots, but I kept telling myself to stay open to give them a chance. When Mom opened the door, she hugged me tight, saying how much she had missed me. The house smelled like roasted turkey and pine from the Christmas tree in the living room. Everything looked normal, traditional, like a scene from a holiday movie. Dad was in his usual chair, and he nodded at me when I walked in. Kyle stood awkwardly in the corner, and when our eyes met, he tried to smile. I did not smile back, but I did not glare either. I just acknowledged his presence and sat down on the couch. Mom brought out appetizers and drinks, chattering about the neighbors and the weather and anything except the elephant in the room. We ate dinner at 7. The conversation stayed surface level. Work stuff, mild complaints about traffic, comments about the food. Nobody mentioned the last time we were all together. Nobody brought up Laura or the engagement or the betrayal. It felt strange, like we were all actors in a play pretending to be a normal family. I started to relax a little, thinking maybe this was their way of moving forward, just letting time heal things without forcing a confrontation. Then we finished dessert. Dad cleared his throat and set down his coffee cup, and I felt my entire body tense up. I knew that throat clear. That was his, I'm about to say something important, throat clear. He looked directly at me and said he was glad I had come tonight, that it showed I still valued family. Then he said he thought it was time we moved past what happened, that holding grudges was not healthy, that Christmas was about forgiveness and new beginnings. My heart sank. This was not about making things right. This was a setup. Mom leaned forward, her eyes pleading, and said Kyle had been suffering so much these past 2 months. She said he had lost weight, that he was not sleeping well, that the guilt was eating him alive. She said she thought I should forgive him for his sake, for the family's sake, for my own sake. She made it sound like my forgiveness was a gift I owed them, not something Kyle needed to earn. Kyle spoke up, his voice shaking just enough to sound sincere. He said he was sorry, that he knew he had hurt me, that he would do anything to make it right. He said he was my brother, and that we could not just throw away our relationship over this. The words sounded rehearsed, like he had practiced them in the mirror. There was no real accountability, no acknowledgement of the depth of what he had done. Just a performance designed to get him off the hook. Dad looked at me expectantly. He said Kyle had apologized, and now it was my turn to say I forgave him. He said once I did that, we could all put this behind us and go back to being a family. He made it sound so simple, like forgiveness was just a word I needed to say, and everything would magically be fine. I sat there looking at each of them. My father, who taught me about honor and integrity, now asking me to swallow my self-respect. My mother, who taught me about love and kindness, now asking me to accept betrayal as no big deal. My brother, who I had protected and supported my entire life, now playing the victim. And I realized this entire Christmas Eve dinner had been orchestrated. They had not invited me to reconcile. They had invited me to ambush me into compliance. I asked the question I already knew the answer to. What happens if I do not forgive him? The room went silent. Dad's face hardened. He said, "Then I should not bother coming back to this house. I was choosing my pride over my family, and he would not tolerate that." Mom gasped, telling Dad he did not mean that, but he ignored her. He stared at me, waiting for me to back down like I always had before, to be the responsible one, the peacekeeper, the one who put family harmony above everything else. But I was not that person anymore. That person died in a bedroom 2 months ago. I stood up. My hands were not shaking. My voice did not waver. I looked at my father and asked him if he remembered teaching me about honor, about keeping your word, about being a man of integrity. He started to speak, but I kept going. I trusted him with everything. Our family lived in Seattle. Dad Michael had been a bank director before he retired. Mom Susan was a retired nurse. They raised us to value family above everything else, to stick together no matter what. Kyle was always the baby, the one who got sick easily when he was little, the one Mom worried about constantly. I was the steady one, the responsible one, the one they leaned on. I never minded. That was just how our family worked. She was asking me to betray myself so she could feel better about her family being intact. I said I loved her, but I could not do what she was asking. Then I looked at Kyle. I told him he was not sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. If I had not come home early that day, he would still be sleeping with Laura, still coming to family dinners, still pretending to be my brother. I said he did not make a mistake. He made a choice. For 2 months, he chose to betray me every single day, and the fact that he was now trying to paint himself as a victim showed me he had not learned anything. I told all of them that they did not invite me here to heal. They invited me here to pressure me into pretending everything was okay, so they could feel less guilty. They wanted me to sacrifice my self-respect so they could have their picture-perfect family Christmas. But that was not love. That was manipulation. And I was done being manipulated. Mom started crying, saying I was breaking her heart, that I was tearing the family apart. I told her as gently as I could that I was not tearing anything apart. Kyle did that 2 months ago, and they had chosen to protect him instead of standing up for what was right. That was their choice, and they had to live with it. But I did not have to participate in it. Dad stood up, his face red with anger. He said if I walked out that door, I should not expect to be welcomed back. This was my last chance to choose family. I looked at him, this man I had admired my whole life, and I felt nothing but sadness. I told him I was choosing family. I was choosing the family I would build for myself with people who respected me, who valued honesty, who did not ask me to compromise my integrity for their comfort. Kyle finally spoke, his voice breaking. Not one drunken mistake like Laura had claimed. 2 months of lies. 2 months of looking me in the eye at family dinners, at football games, at regular weekday visits, while betraying me in the worst way possible. 2 months of coming to my house, eating my food, pretending to be my brother, then getting into bed with my fiancée the moment I left for work. I turned to my parents. I asked them if they heard that. 2 months. And they wanted me to forgive him. I gently removed her hand and told her I loved her, that I loved Dad, but I could not be part of a family where I was not respected. Kyle stood up, looking like he wanted to say something, but no words came out. What was there to say? We both knew the truth. Dad made one final attempt. He said if I walked out, I would regret it for the rest of my life, that family was all anyone really had in this world. I turned back and looked at him one last time. Not that he was sorry, not that he had betrayed me, just that I had come home too early, as if the problem was my timing, not his actions. That sentence hit me harder than seeing them together. It showed me exactly who my brother had become, someone I did not recognize anymore. I felt like I was watching this scene from outside my own body, like I was floating near the ceiling, looking down at this poor man whose life was imploding, feeling sorry for him but unable to help. And as I drove through the quiet streets past houses glowing with Christmas lights, I felt something unexpected. Relief. I had stood up for myself. I had not let them bully me into forgiveness I did not feel. I had chosen my own dignity over their comfort, and that I realized was the greatest gift I could have given myself. The days after Christmas were strange. I spent the holiday alone in my apartment cooking a simple meal for myself, watching old movies, going to bed early. It was not sad. It was peaceful. I did not have to perform happiness or pretend everything was fine. I could just be without the weight of other people's expectations crushing me. January came, and I went back to work with a new focus. My boss noticed the change in me, said I seemed more grounded, more present. I threw myself into a big project, a commercial building downtown that would take months to complete. The work was demanding, but I liked that. It gave me purpose, something to build, when everything else had fallen apart. I kept going to my weekend hiking group. One Saturday in late January, a woman named Natalie joined us for the first time. She had just moved to Denver from Boston, did not know anyone, and figured hiking was a good way to meet people. We walked together for most of the trail, talking about everything and nothing. She was a pediatric nurse, funny, without trying to be honest, in a way that felt rare. When the hike ended, I found myself hoping she would come back the next week. She did. And the week after that. By March, we were meeting for coffee between hikes, texting during the week, slowly building something that felt different from anything I had known before. Natalie did not know about Laura or Kyle or my family. To her, I was just Bert, a construction engineer who liked hiking and bad coffee. There was something freeing about that, about being seen for who I was now instead of who I had been. I did not tell her my story for a long time. When I finally did on a quiet evening in her apartment, she listened without interrupting. When I finished, she did not say I was wrong or right. She just said it sounded like I had made the only choice I could live with. She did not try to fix me or convince me to reconcile with my family. She just accepted that this was part of my past and we would move forward from here. That acceptance meant more to me than any words of comfort could have. My parents emailed a few times over those months. Short messages, mostly from Mom, saying she missed me, that there was always a place for me at home. I responded politely, but briefly. I was not angry anymore. I just knew that going back would mean sacrificing the peace I had fought so hard to find. Kyle sent one letter in April, handwritten several pages long. He said he understood why I had left, that he did not blame me, that he hoped someday I could forgive him. I read it once, then put it in a drawer. I did not respond. Not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. By June, 9 months after that October afternoon, I realized I had built a new life. I had friends who knew me as I was now. I had work that challenged and fulfilled me. I had Natalie, who made me laugh and reminded me what healthy love looked like. I had learned that walking away from toxicity, even when it wore the mask of family, was not selfish. It was self-preservation, and there was no shame in that. I thought about Kyle sometimes, about my parents, about the family I used to have. I did not hate them. Hate takes energy, and I needed all my energy for building the life I wanted. I just accepted that some relationships do not survive certain betrayals, and that is okay. Not everything broken can be fixed, and not everything that ends is a failure. Sometimes it is just the natural consequence of people making choices, and you have to respect those consequences even when they hurt. I learned that forgiveness is not a requirement. People talk about forgiveness like it is something you owe, like you are broken if you cannot give it. And as I drove through the quiet streets past houses glowing with Christmas lights, I felt something unexpected. Relief. I had stood up for myself. I had not let them bully me into forgiveness I did not feel. I had chosen my own dignity over their comfort, and that, I realized, was the greatest gift I could have given myself. The days after Christmas were strange. I spent the holiday alone in my apartment cooking a simple meal for myself, watching old movies, going to bed early. And the ones who do not are just as valuable, sometimes more so because they chose you without obligation. They stayed because they wanted to, not because they had to. I learned that sometimes loving yourself means disappointing other people. My parents were disappointed that I would not come back and play the role of dutiful son who forgives and forgets. Kyle was disappointed that I would not absolve him of his guilt, but their disappointment was not my responsibility. My responsibility was to protect my own peace, my own dignity, my own future. And I did that by walking away. Most importantly, I learned that you can survive things you think will destroy you. That October day, standing in that bedroom, I thought my life was over. In a way, it was. But endings create space for beginnings. The life I have now is quieter, smaller in some ways, but it is mine. It is built on honesty and self-respect, and people who actually value me. And that is worth more than a family that only wanted me when I was willing to diminish myself. If you are in a similar situation right now, let me ask you something. Are you staying in a relationship? Any relationship because you genuinely want to or because you are afraid of what leaving will cost you? Are you accepting treatment you do not deserve because you have been told that is what love requires? Think about that. Really think about it. Because the answer to that question will show you the path forward. And whatever you decide, know that choosing yourself is not selfish. It is the bravest thing you can do. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from family or someone close to you to protect your peace? How did you handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more real stories like this one, and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope you find the courage to choose yourself when you need to most. Take care of yourself out there, and remember, you deserve respect, even from the people who are supposed to love you, especially from them.